Hello ladies and gents, and welcome to the fourth video in our Java game programming series. And today we are going to talk about program flow control, and that is going to involve if statements. Now, people who usually aren't familiar with programs so much have probably heard of if statements before, and an if statement is the main way in a program of controlling whether a piece of code executes or it doesn't. Okay? So let's just dive right in and look at how we write if statements in Java. So if I say if, parentheses, and then brackets. Okay? So if the whatever I put in these parentheses is true, it'll execute the code in between these brackets. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to type true in there, and this will be true, and I am going to move my system.out.println line inside of my if statement. And I am going to have it type out if statement is true, right? Now if I run it, it'll print out if statement is true. This piece of code executed because true is equal to true, right? I'm going to take this true and I am going to make it false, right? Now, Eclipse is a smart cookie and it's going to give us a bunch of yellow lines because it knows this piece of code will never run. It even calls it dead code, right? So it gives away the answer before we even run it. If we do run it, hey, it doesn't print out. And it never can print out because false will never be true. Okay? So let's get rid of that. Now, I want to do some testing. I'm going to get me two numbers. I'm going to say int number equals 4 and int number equals 8. Actually, we're going to name it number 2. You cannot have variables with the same name. It'll yell at you because it'll get confused which one is which. You can't have them be the same name. Okay? Now I'm going to have an if statement. Now we're going to get introduced into truth operators. Whether or not things are true or false, these operators will return. Okay? So I'm going to say if number, right, is less than number 2. Okay, so is number less than number 2? I run it, that is true, and it says if statement is true. So number, as we have is 4, is less than 8. 4 is less than 8, therefore this line of code executes. Right? So I'm going to make my number 2 equal to 4. 4 is not less than 4, therefore the if statement does not execute. Now, if I want it to be less than or equal to, I have to add an equal sign after my less than. So less than or equal to number 2. If I run it, if statement is true because number 4 is less than or equal to the number 4, right? Now, you can do the same thing for greater than and greater than or equal to. It's the same concept, and it'll work both ways. Alright? Now there is another operator, which is the equal to, is equal to. So, when we have just one equal symbol, that is an assignment operator. It is setting number equal to 4. When we have two equal operators, it is a is equal to operator. So it is testing whether or not number is equal to number 2. So right here we have 4 and 4. So these both are equal, and when we run our if statement will in fact say is true. But if I say make the other numbers 8 again, it's not true. 4 does not equal 8, and therefore will not run. So what if we want an if statement for number does not equal number 2? Well, that's simple. We'll get rid of our first equal sign and put an exclamation point there. So this is now number does not equal number 2. So 4 does not equal 8, and our if statement is therefore true. But if we make both of them 4 and rerun it, 4 is not equal to 4. That is false, so it does not operate. Those are your basic operations for testing whether or not things are equal or greater than or less than, or just basically the truth, whether or not things are true or false. So we have a line of code. This line of code will only execute if our if statement is in fact true. But what if we want something that executes if it's false? Right? So if statement is false, we need to write after our brackets for if statement else. And I'm going to hit enter again and our open and close brackets. So now in between these two brackets, code will execute if our if statement is in fact false. So I'm going to copy this and put it over here. I'm going to say if statement is false. So right now our if statement is currently false because if 4 does not equals 4, 4 equals 4, so this is false. So if we run it, we get if statement is false. So it tested this, saw that it was false, skipped this code, and went to our else and executed this code. Okay? So we can make this if statement true again and run it. And the if statement is true. So it comes through here. 4 does not equal 8. That is true. And it executes this line of code and then skips this line of code. It doesn't execute. Right. Now, in our last video, I talked about variables, and there was one variable I left out, and I left out on purpose. And that variable is a true or false variable, known as a boolean. So a boolean stores true or false. Okay? And I'm going to say boolean. I'm going to name it true or false. And I'm going to set it equal to number does not equal number 2. Right? So if I put true or false here, the name of my boolean, and I run it, we get if statement is true. Because 4 does not equal 8, right? This is false. And it takes that false and it stores it in our boolean data. And then we take our if statement and we test our boolean for whether or not the boolean is true or false. Because we assigned it to false, it is false, and because it is true, my bad, because 4 does not equal 8 is true. I'm sorry if I confused you there. I confused myself. If 4 does not equal 8, that is true. So it takes this true and it stores it in our boolean, and then it goes to our if statement and it sees whether or not true or false is equal to true or false. And it sees that it is equal to true, and it executes this line of code, and it does not execute this line of code. We are now starting to get into the programmer's mindset. This is the kind of stuff that you have to work with without really thinking about it. It just takes some time to get into the mentality of thinking like a computer, but the more you work with this, the better you'll get. If you don't fully understand it now, you will understand it in the future. Don't worry. It'll just take some time. Okay? Anything else? Now, since we're testing a boolean here, what if we wanted this to be false? So if this if statement, we want to test if it's true. So the if statement tests if it's true, and then it runs this statement, right? Well, what if we wanted it to run this statement if it was false, and run this statement if it was true. We would flip it, right? The way you would do that is in front of the true or false, you put an exclamation point. The exclamation point stands for not. So if not is not true. So if not true, true or false. So if true or false is equal to, if this equals false, it will return true. So if we run this now, right, statement is equal to false. So it ran this because this is true, right? This is now true. And we give it here, right? This would execute if it's true. But because we put the not there, it flops it. It makes your true false and your false true. So now since this is true, it will flip it because there is not. It makes it false and it runs if statement is false. Okay. And of course, you can store directly false or true inside of your Boolean, and that works perfectly fine, right? I think that's going to do it for this video. I've thrown a lot of information out at you guys, and hopefully you absorbed quite a bit of it. Comment, rate, subscribe, and thanks for watching.